This is the Audi RS-Q3 edition 10 years, and it's meant to be a celebration of the RS-Q3, which uses a very unique motor. Under the hood of the Audi RS-Q3 is this 2.5 litre 5-cylinder turbocharged motor. It produces 294 kilowatts, which is 400 PS, and 480 newton meters of torque. So that makes this motor actually 17% more powerful than the previous generation RS-Q3. And so all that power is sent through an Audi Quattro all-wheel drive system, and that's sent through a 7-speed dual clutch automatic. And so why is the 5-cylinder so important? One, it sounds very unique. Two, it has amazing presentation in here, and it really does look like Audi's just chopped an Audi R8 V10's motor in half and chucked it in this car. And three, this thing has so much heritage behind it. It's actually one of the motors that won a bunch of different races for Audi back in the day with their Quattro rally car and also the Audi 90 IMSA car. That thing just flew with a 5-cylinder turbo motor, and now Audi have kept the tradition up by keeping the 5-cylinder turbo motor alive here in the Audi RS-Q3 and the Audi RS3. Now I'm here on a road trip trying to find out why you would spend $102,900 on this special edition Audi RS-Q3. And this is also the first time I've driven an Audi RS-Q3, so I wanted to find out what all the hype was about and if it's worth buying this just for that 5-cylinder motor. Now, even though this is really just an appearance package, there's no power or performance upgrades or any sort of real big body changes for the edition 10 years, this thing is limited to only 555 units worldwide, making this possibly the rarest car I've ever tested here on this channel. Now, the RS-Q3 edition 10 years is only available in the Sportback design, which is that sloping roofline, which means it's also lighter than the traditional SUV, and there's some more bits and pieces inside here that make this lighter than a normal RS-Q3 Sportback. But we're getting this black exterior package, which looks great. I love the contrast against this special edition paint, which is called Kronos Grey Metallic, which you can only get here on the edition 10 years. And of course, you're getting LED lights, headlight washes, a bunch of different aero up front to help cool down that massive 2.5 litre 5-cylinder motor, because it needs it because of how much power this produces. And if you have a lot of power, you have to have a lot of brakes. Now, this is the standard steel set of brakes. You can opt for some carbon ceramics if you really want to, but these should do enough to help slow down this car because they're cross-drilled ventilated and they are pretty massive inside these 21-inch wheels, which are exclusive for the edition 10 years. Now, these wheels are wrapped in a Continental rubber. There's a bunch of other blacked out pieces here on the side of the Q3 Sportback, and you do have this little roof spoiler up here for a tiny bit of aero. Now, I love these wheels because they say RS on them to remind you you are driving an RS-Q3. You do have keyless entry and exit, but here's the thing. Your key is a traditional flip-out key, so they're keeping the edition 10 years theme by giving you a 10-year-old key. Now, if you do like the look of the SUV over the Sportback and you want this edition 10 years, these wheels, this paint, unfortunately, yes, like I said, you can only get it in this body style, but I really do like the look of the RS-Q3 Sportback, more so than the Q5 Sportback. Now, you are getting a square tire setup with all tires being 255s all the way around the car, but you are getting solid ventilated brakes at the back. These aren't cross-drilled like they are at the front. But you are getting adaptive dampers, which make a massive difference for a car that can actually feel quite stiff for an SUV. Now, of course, you do get a rear wiper. You are getting blacked out badges as part of this edition 10 years pack, and you're getting LED taillights. But what I love the most on the new generation of RS-Q3 are these twin giant oval exhausts, which look fantastic, and they shroud these quad exits, which are also bimodal because they have a flap to make this thing louder or quieter, which is very nice if you have neighbors that hate the sound of loud cars. And here's what this exhaust sounds like in its quiet mode and then in its most loud mode. Now, because the roofline comes down a bit more, it doesn't have as much boot space as the traditional SUV body shape of the RS-Q3, but you're still getting 530 litres with all the seats up, and you can get 1,400 litres total if you fold the seats down, which do fold in a 40-20-40 split. And that's useful because you can still seat two people very comfortably and put more luggage through the middle instead of compromising on seat room. But under here, there is only a tyre repair kit and your battery here in the rear. There is no spare tyre at all. And of course, you do have a height adjustable power tailgate. Now the back seats aren't too bad. I'm a 5'11" adult and I'm sitting behind my driving position here. Now my knees are pressed right against these hard carbon bucket seats, which are exclusive to the RSQ3 Edition 10 years. But I can slide the seat forwards and backwards just a tiny bit and recline it a little bit more. But right now I'm in my full recline and my full bench seat is right back. So this is as much room as you're getting in the back of the RSQ3. Now you are getting copper stitching back here and beautiful leather seats. You are getting a nice wide center armrest here with some cup holders, which are kind of small. And you are getting some storage here in the doors, but it's not a lot. But at least you get your own air vents, 2 USB-C ports and a 12-volt socket here in the rear. Now the middle seat's going to suffer because of the large transmission exhaust tunnel. So if you're going to sit in the middle, you're not going to really have any feet room, but that doesn't really matter because you're probably only going to use this to carry around 4 adults, maybe 5. Now up front, we have nice heavy doors. We have an illuminated RSQ3 sill as we get in, and we also get some puddle lights. We also get RSQ3 floor mats and a really sporty interior. I love this interior for the Edition 10 years. It looks great. You have carbon on the dash. You have this Alcantara suede type material up here as well. You have some pretty generic doors, but you have a little bit more Alcantara type material here on the doors with some copper stitching. Of course, you're getting more of that suede around here, more copper stitching around the steering wheel, which could be had as a round or flat bottom design. And you are getting these beautiful bucket seats, which are a blend of that suede and leather, and have RS put right in the middle of them. And they also obviously have those harness pass-throughs here as well, which are highlighted in red, and they feel so supportive, so comfortable. But the only thing that some people might complain about for an RSQ3 that costs over $100,000 before on-road costs is that, yes, these are manually adjustable, but they are heated. But yes, if you want to adjust, they are going to take a little bit longer to adjust to get comfortable. And if you are swapping drivers all the time, it might get a little bit frustrating. In here, we're getting Sonos speakers. We are getting this center touchscreen here, which is angled towards the driver, which is very useful. And you can do things like adjust your drive modes, and it's very simple to operate. I use it mainly for wireless Apple CarPlay. And then you do have 2 USB-C ports down here to connect your phone to charging or to the screen. And you've also got a wireless charging pad here. We have lots of physical controls in traditional Audi fashion. Some people might argue that this interior is feeling a little bit old, but to be honest, I think it's perfectly fine. We have a 12-inch display in front of me as well, which you can change the look of quite a number of different ways, but I really love the big center tachometer you can get, which is the RS exclusive rev counter, which just looks so good. And you can honestly overload how much information you can get in the middle, or you can just get rid of that and have a more simplistic driving display. Love the flexibility there. We do have a telescopic steering wheel with more physical buttons and a big RS button to jump straight into the most aggressive setting here. And these RS modes are customizable, so you can jump between RS1 and RS2, and that will allow you to customize everything from the engine to the throttle to into suspension, so you can really customize your drive and sort of just have a really customized experience. Now I like the paddles here. They do look great and have a nice feel to them, but we do have an independent stalk here for cruise control. And if you press on all these materials up here, they do feel quite nice up top, but they do get a bit scratchy a bit further down. But if you are looking for the most exciting interior of the RSQ3 range, it has to be the Edition 10 years, purely because of these seats. These look great. The carbon, you can skip everything in this interior. I mean, the suede around the steering wheel is quite nice, but these seats really do make this interior. Now, what I love about the RSQ3 is that you can jump in, put it into drive, and have a relaxing time. It's well sound insulated in here. The engine, even though it's a special 5-cylinder turbocharged motor, you're not really going to hear too much about it unless you really interact with it. Now, cruising along here, we have plenty of torque under our right foot to just get moving along without having to rev too high. And in terms of fuel economy, you can get very sensible figures of around 8 liters per 100 Ks, which is quite good for an engine that can put out 400 PS, which is around 400 horsepower. That's insane. Back in the day, if you had 400 horsepower, you'd be chewing through the fuel like no tomorrow. But now it's nice and chill inside the RSQ3 in terms of the fuel bill. Now, you can make this more exciting. Of course you can. You've got a couple of different drive modes here. You have efficiency, which is the most sensible and most fuel efficient option for drive modes. You have comfort, you have auto, and you have dynamic, which opens up the valves at the back, puts your gearbox into sport mode, and makes your car sound like this. But you have an RS button here on the steering wheel. What does that do? Well, it enters custom modes. And so you can go in here and get into your most ridiculous settings, or you can have some sort of ridiculous settings, but then have some comfort features activated, like some more plush suspension and stuff like that. Now, the handling of the RSQ3 is pretty good. It is lifted off the ground, and it does feel like you're driving an SUV, but it The seating position here is quite nice, that it doesn't feel like you're driving a truck. Instead, you just feel like you're sitting up in a higher up car. You've got a great greenhouse around here, so I have plenty of visibility. And things I love engaging with are the steering wheel. I love holding it. It feels great in the hand thanks to this suede material running around it. And of course, the paddles are actually quite nice, and you can make ridiculous sounds like this. Now, of course, when you're in your dynamic or RS modes, you're going to have some pretty stiff suspension. And I will admit that these 21-inch wheels do feel pretty stiff even in comfort settings. You can feel the road just a little bit more, but road sounds and all that sort of stuff is kept nice and away unless you want some more sounds in terms of exhaust sound when you go to shift down, because this is a very well insulated car. Now, you can shift gears here through this giant lever here, which some people might love because that means you can actually physically move the gears using a giant gear lever like you traditionally can, where some other SUVs now are just using drive-by-wire, which means you're just getting some boring buttons instead of this nice big gear lever. But for some other people, they might think this looks a bit old school. Now, the brakes in here are just insane. There are quite a lot of brakes for this car. So if I go to slam on the emergency brakes in 3, 2, 1, oh, they've got a nice pillowy feel to them, which is good. Like in terms of like, they don't really anchor on hard. So it's going to be good if you have to stop quickly with people and luggage in the car, because it's not going to send it flying forwards and people aren't going to complain about a sore neck, but it will stop this car quite quickly the more you dig into the pedal. But of course, you can get more stopping power if you want in the form of carbon ceramic brakes, which I will not recommend unless you are looking to track this thing at least once a month, because that is a substantial cost, and your cost benefit ratio there doesn't really go up if you're going to only use that on the street. But it is a pretty cool flex to have an RSQ3 with carbon ceramic brakes. Now, here's the thing. I've been driving this car for a couple of 100 kilometers now and getting a really good idea what this thing is like to live with. It's a bit more sporty than a traditional Q3, and you do feel that this car is a bit more special. That's because listen to this sound. Look, you can buy a more affordable 4-cylinder option in the form of like a Tiguan R or a T-Roc R or something like that, but nothing makes this sort of sound. Even a more expensive V8 powered SUV, there are plenty of V8 powered SUVs, but there are no 5-cylinder powered SUVs anymore, and that's what makes the RSQ3 really special. It is the only performance 5-cylinder turbocharged SUV you can buy, and when they make it more special with an Edition 10 setup like this with these special seats and a nicer interior, this really does feel like a special car. That sound you're hearing, that 5-cylinder sound, is iconic. It's obviously Audi's very special motor that they've used to win a whole bunch of races back in the day, and now it lives on in the RS3 and RSQ3. Now, in other markets, you can get this 5-cylinder in the Cupra Formentor, but we don't get that option here, and it doesn't look likely we will ever. But that means you are driving a very special car when you have an RSQ3 or an RS3. Now, the boring stuff in terms of like cruise control and all that, that works really well. I like the independent stalk. That's pretty easy to navigate. Everything else in here is pretty easy because it's all mainly physical controls. Even the drive mode is a physical button here as well. So unless you want to dig into more settings here in the center screen, you don't really have to interact with this unless you want to use Apple CarPlay. And I will say the Sonos speakers here, fantastic, great upgrade. And yeah, it does feel a little bit cheap in some materials, but you're not hearing anything that feels too cheap. Everything in here just feels really well buttoned together. There's no creaks or rattles or anything like that, and it's been a very pleasant car to drive, and you don't really feel too worn out driving this thing. Now, at the end of the day, you can go and spend less money on a performance SUV that has 4 cylinders, but it won't sound as good, it won't feel as fun to drive as this 5-cylinder, which just makes this SUV far more exciting and far more entertaining than any competition it has below its price point. And I would argue that this motor is almost more entertaining to drive than a V8. Make sure you review your own car on productreview.com.au. I'll see you in the next one.